Hello everyone, welcome to another session in the Food Packaging Technology course. Last week we were dealing with the different packaging equipments and machinery, and this week too we will be continuing with the different machineries that are used in the food industry. We'll start with the retort pouches. Retort pouches, you all are very familiar with the canning technology, and today the rigid cans are being now replaced by flexible pouches. And these retort pouches will be dealt with in detail in this present session. So if you look at a retort pouch, it's a rectangular, flexible, laminated plastic. So these words are important. Laminated plastic is when you have two different plastic materials which are joined together so that you get the benefits of each of the materials. Four-side hermetically sealed pouch, again a very important term, because all the seals are such a way that it will not allow the ingress of any gas into the pouch in which the food is thermally processed. So just like you do in cans, in a retort pouch, you're thermally processing your product in such a way that it is sterilized and has a long shelf life like your cans of about 1 year. If you look at the picture here, it shows you some of the retort pouches that are there. They are flexible. You can see the four-sided are hermetically sealed. And it's a rectangle. That's the shape that they usually have in a retort pouch. Originally, it was developed in the 1950s and the 1960s in America through research and encouragement from the US Army. In fact, in India too, the retort pouches were first used by the Defense Food Research Laboratories for the Army purposes. And these kinds of foods, of course, they are much lighter in weights because you're reducing the weight of the can to just these flexible pouches. And it has the same benefit as what you have in your cans. So if you look at these, they are inert, heat sealable, dimensionally stable and heat resistant to at least 121 degrees centigrade. Sterilization has to be done at 121 degrees centigrade for at least 15 minutes. At 15 psi, you're sure that your product is going to be commercially sterile. We've used this word 2-3 times this time, and I'm sure you know this word by now. Commercially sterilized is when a product is heated in such a way that if there are any spores remaining, they will not germinate at the normal storage temperature of the can or the pouch. So these retort pouches, very important that they should have low water and vapor pressure, or they should be a good barrier against oxygen water vapor. Permeability, it must be physically strong and it should have good aging properties. What are the products that you have? Almost anything that you can in your rigid cans can be packed in your flexible retort pouches. Whether it's your tuna, your salmon, your chicken patties, vegetable curries that you have flooded in the supermarkets, different chicken curries, the chipped beef, chili, ground beef, even your payasams among others are the ones that are retort pouch. And these advantage of this especially, it can be kept at room temperature for at least 1 year. So just like aseptically packaged products, your retort pouched products need not have any extra storage needs like chilling. Now most of these cases, the pouches are reverse printed on the PET film. So I told you they're laminated. So laminated, one of the film is your outer layer will be your PET. So this PET is usually reverse printed. So once it's reverse printed and then you have the other layers, you're making sure that this print does not come in contact with the food. You're trying to make the migration as low as possible. So all these laminates that you're going to use are going to have stringent requirements to ensure that no undesirable substance is going to enter into your package. We've already studied how overall migration test is done and what are the limits for these. So this is a picture of the tomato paste that has been retort pouched at Kufos. Has a shelf life of around 1 year. You can see that it is transparent. You can see the product, and if you do print it, it's usually printed on the reverse side of the first layer, which is the PET layer. This is important that the materials that you use for your retort pouches, of course you will have your aluminium foil if it's required. It is important that you have your aluminium foil as a barrier, oxygen barrier and a water vapor barrier. And you can either preform it or it's an inline formed, just like a form fill, it can be inline formed or you can preform it before. And the common pouches, look at the laminations: PET, nylon foil and PP, PET, nylon or EVOH, or you can have PVDC and PP. They withstand the high temperatures, they have good barrier properties, and some of them are transparent. You'll be able to see them. The structure, again, if you look at this, it's more clear in this picture here, where you will have your inner layer polypropylene. I mentioned in the other videos that inner layer is usually polyethylene because of its heat sealable property. Polypropylene is used here because it has to withstand the higher temperature of 121 degrees for 15 minutes. So your inner layer is going to be your polypropylene. You can have your nylon, a grain which is abrasion resistant. You've got your aluminum foil for your barrier properties, protects it from light, gases, odors, and helps to extend the shelf life. And you will have your polyester or the PET, which is the outer layer. Excellent printing surfaces, and it provides this overall strength to the pouch. So this is very important that you know what are the different layers in a retort pouch and what are the properties of each of these layers which is contributed to the final pouch. This again shows you combination. It's taken from the Nippon Printing Company from 2002, which was published. You have the aluminium type, like I told you, and transparent type. See, these aluminium types, they do have the aluminium foil kept in one of the layers. They're used in small pouches for anything, curries and sauces. And a lot of products you use the aluminium foil. But at the same time, you can have transparent ones. In the transparent one, you avoid the aluminium foil. You'll have your PET, oriented PA, and your CPP. Or you have the transparent barrier type, which again can be used for a number of other kind of products. We already mentioned where these are applied. You can use it in gravies, high quality entries, fish, sauces, soups, vegetables, anything can be retort pouched. Anything that you have you need for a high shelf life and which you need to be ready to cook. Most of your ready to cook meals nowadays are retort pouched. So the retail packs that you have are usually up to 450 grams for home use. You have these standing pouches. The picture that I showed you earlier was again a stand-up pouches where the bottom is a gusseted layer. You can keep it as a flat bottom so that you can keep it on standing. So these stand-up pouches are usually used for your fruit juices and other drinks, for soups and sauces. If you need a larger quantity for catering size pouches for industrial trade, then you can go up to 3.5 kg. For already prepared vegetable products like carrots, peeled potatoes, potato chips, you can go in for these kind of bigger quantities. Advantages. What are the advantages? Number of advantages for your retort pouches. One of them is less energy is required, less space is required compared to cans, weight is less, packaging is much cheaper. The filling lines are easily changed for a different size. Each time you change the size, you need to change the lines, but these lines are much easier to change when you have your pouches. Rapid heat penetration and fast process. I'm sure you all know there is something when you do a sterilization. In a can also, you've got something called a cold point. That is the center point of the can, and you need to ensure that even the center point of the can, where the heat will get transferred last, it's heated up to the desired temperature. So same thing in a retort pouches, you want to make sure that your center point or the cold point is heated to the desired temperature, but it's much easier to reach that temperature when you have a pouch. So it's a rapid heat penetration is there. No refrigeration required, which is one of the USBs of the retort pouches. It's more compact. You can pack and stack as many as possible. You save a lot of space in this. The pouches are lower in mass. That is understandable. Much lighter in weight than your cans. So it's much cheaper to transport. Once it's much cheaper to transport, the cost, naturally, of packaging cost also comes lower. And retort pouches materials are non-corrosive. So number of advantages for your retort pouches compared to the rigid ones. Disadvantages are there. One of them is to achieve the equivalent cannery production efficiency, a major investment is needed. So most of these products, advanced as though they are, you need a good capital cost. But once it is done, once it is in sync, you will have a lot of return also, which is the other side of it. Now the production speed is less than that of a common can seamer. The new handling techniques have to be adopted. You have to have trained personnel for this, which is also important. Heat processing is more critical and more complex. See, many of these things, canning also, when you have studied canning, you would know that under-processing is also a problem, over-processing is also a problem. So if you process it to ensure that it is really completely sterilized, you might end up changing the color and the nutritional value of your product. Sometimes even the flavor changes. So you should be very careful with that portion. But at the same time, under-processing is another problem. If it's under-processed, because of the anaerobic conditions, you know that very toxic components may be produced by anaerobic organisms like your Clostridium botulinum. So these things are more complex in a retort pouch rather than the other heat processes. And being a non-rigid product, some of the fruits, they lose their shape. So there are a few disadvantages, but on the whole, retort pouches are much more advantageous to use. The production of these pouches. So they can be formed from reels. You've already seen in the videos and all. You've got reels of these laminated materials. So these reels can actually be taken up and you can go into the form, fill, seal machine in the plant itself. Or you can individually pre-form these pouches. Separately you get it. You can pre-form it, fill it with the product and then take it for your retort processing. Now the forming consists of folding the laminate material in the middle, polyester side out, heat sealing at the bottom. Basically, when you have it, these are the aluminium layer containing pouches. So when it is pre-formed, it's very simple. You just have to open it up, fill it with the product, seal it properly. Sealing is the most important, and then take it for your heat processing. So this shows you the diagram. You can either have for the filling and sealing. This filling and sealing can either be in the vertical. We already talked about form, fill, seal machines, vertical FFS and horizontal. So vertically or horizontally, you can fill in the products. Sealers can be there, which may either be the hot bar or it may be the impulse sealing. So this is a representation of a filling and sealing machine in case of a retort pouches. So these are all pouches that can be kept for a long time. So one thing that is very important is here you are subjecting your retort pouches to high temperatures. And this heat system that you are using, heat is either going to come from the steam heated water with compressed air overpressure, or you can use a mixture of steam and air. Basically, you need to reach the 121 degrees centigrade for 15 minutes at a pressure of 15 psi. Now, process determination. We do have process calculations. It's beyond the limit of our session, but canning process calculations are there where you have to calculate the time required so that you can ensure 12D process or commercial sterility for your product. So the mathematical approach to determine the heat transfer in the retort, that of a transfer in a thin slab rather than in a cylinder. So when you calculate heat transfer, you do the calculation in such a way you'll see the heat transfer through a thin slab. Do not take that in cylinder one, as in the case of can. In the case of can, you will always consider its shape to be cylindrical. So ideally, the variation in temperature should be from point to point in retort. It should not be greater than 1 degree centigrade. As you increase, it should be point to point, not more than 1 degree centigrade. Another very important thing which they do in the retort, which is a continuous process, you heat it up to, you have to immediately cool it also. See that it doesn't go beyond overcooking is a bad thing. So see that it is cooled. So following the pressure cooling and removing the racks and trays from the pouches, they must be dried, inspected, and they're placed in some kind of outer packages. So this is the retort process that is done in our laboratories. The retort, you have the steam or a mixture of steam or air which can be used for heating it up to that particular temperature. This is the picture of when you open the retort, you have the space where the racks with the retort, with the cans or with the retort pouches are kept. This shows you the cans which are kept in those trays, but at the same time, like we said, instead of the cans, you can replace it with the retort pouches very easily. This is one of the flexible pouch, a retort pouch that has been used. It can be kept into your retort and used for processing. Now, if you want to see that your pouches, what is the quality assurance? So you need to monitor this continuously. Generally, you have a thermocouple kept inside the retort to see that the temperature is reached, and every point, this cold point of in the can or in the pouch, it reaches to the desired temperature. 1. Regular testing of the formed pouches is important. You need to carefully select, maintain and control the filling and sealing and the handling machinery. Now, post sealing, once you finish sealing, you have to test the closure seals, because post-process contamination is also a very important problem in the industry. You might reach the temperature, but post-processing, if there is any kind of leakage, you can easily have the microbes entering it. If it's under process also, it's another problem. So post-processing, you inspect the seals and see that everything is intact. Careful selection of the staff and training at all levels is also required. Because retort pouches and cans, though the product stays for a long time, if you are not careful, it has led to a lot of problems, especially in the case of toxins from the anaerobic Clostridium bacteria. The temperatures that you have to have, it should achieve required lethality. Lethality is the degree to which a particular process is dangerous. So you have to reach the lethality to see that the disease-causing organisms, or see that all the organisms that are there are destroyed, and the spores also are reduced to such a level that they will not be able to germinate in the normal storage conditions. You need to regularly inspect your retort equipments and ensure uniform heat distribution. And routine checks has to be done 10 to 14 days prior to the distribution. Shelf life. If the package that you've chosen has a good barrier properties, if the processing is done properly, you can be assured of a very long shelf life for your retort packaged products. The shelf stability can sometimes be above 2 years at room temperature, which is the USP of this. In the US rations, they had tested 2 years at 20 degrees centigrade and it showed no significant change for products. So some products, interestingly, have been stored up to 7 years without any problem. Safe, and it is edible also. Foil-free laminates, the ones that I told you are transparent, that you show the tomato paste in, those will demonstrate a shelf life stability depending on the oxygen permeability of the laminate. So if your product is very sensitive, you see that you have a layer which is very much oxygen impermeable. Now, commercial experience shows that product stability is usually from 4 to 6 months is obtainable if you use foil-free laminate. If you include the foil, it will of course have a very, very long shelf life. Nitrogen flushing of the outer container is also very successful. So once you have your retort pouches, you need to keep it in an outer pouch also. If this can be, you keep it in an atmosphere of nitrogen, you have success in extending the shelf life of the product. Now look at this, the types of retort pouches. Preformed pouches, we already said it is made earlier and you just have to fill the product. Inline form pouches, where you take the web of plastic and in the line itself you're going to seal it and form it, and then you go in for your filling. You have pillow packed pouches. These pillow packed pouches can be 3-side seals or 4-side seals. This is already been explained. And you've got the stand-up pouch. These are different designs that you have for your retort pouches. These are your preformed pouches. They're not filled with the products. You can choose from the size, you can choose from, depending on the weight of the product, you can choose your material and then go in for sterilization. So these are your pillow packs. It can either be 3-side sealed, where you can fold it and seal the 3 sides. Basically, before you're filling, you seal 2 sides, fill it and then seal the 3rd side. Or you can have your 4-side seals. 4-side seals, like your sachets, these are sealed on 3 sides, filled, and then the 4th side is sealed. These are your stand-up pouches, very common in the retail market nowadays. These again can be used as stand-up retort pouches. So I think we've gone in detail with the different retort pouches. Why are they used? What are the advantages and disadvantages? What are the materials that are used in retort pouches? And moreover, what are the machineries in which these can be formed, either in the line or it can be preformed? A lot of disadvantages for your retort pouches, which is the technology of tomorrow also. I hope you have understood this portion, and I'll see you all next class with another video. Thank you.